I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dan. Gentlemen, are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
None.
No, sir.
Do we have a motion to approve the minutes of the April 23rd meeting?
Motion to accept.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, item one, we have a legislative update. Ms. Summer-Star, please come up. Give your name and your position. You don't have to give your home address if you don't want to.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Good evening. My name is Summer Starr, and I am the Mid-Atlantic Regional Legislative Coordinator for Council of Prison Locals and the Legislative Coordinator for American Federation of Government Employees, AFGE Local 4010. Our union represents bargaining staff at the Federal Correctional Institution here in Cumberland, Maryland. First and foremost, I would like to thank the Commission for allowing me to speak. Being from a long line of military and law enforcement, I feel compelled to say hats off to local law enforcement, firefighters, and first responders. Prayers are with those who have been responding to Baltimore. Being from Southern California, I remember the Rodney King riots very well. That is probably why I love raising children in Allegany County. I want to let you all know that I think you do a wonderful job. I feel safe in Allegany County, and I thank you. Moving forward, it was about over a year ago I came before the Commission to discuss the federal government shutdown and concerns of the federal correctional workers throughout the U.S., as well as those here in Allegany County. You may recall me speaking of Eric Williams. On Monday, February 25th, 2013, at the United States Penitentiary in Canaan, Pennsylvania, sorry, I get a little bit emotional about this, Senior Officer Eric J. Williams was brutally murdered. Senior Officer Williams was a lone staff member supervising 118 high security inmates when an unprovoked and cowardly inmate attacked him. Senior Officer Williams was unarmed when he was repeatedly struck and stabbed 199 times with a sharpened homemade weapon by the inmate. Eric was just 34 years old. Senior Officer Williams graduated with a criminal justice degree from King's College in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. His law enforcement career began as a loss prevention officer. He continued on to Jefferson Township as a Pennsylvania police officer. On September 11, 2011, he joined the Federal Bureau of Prisons at USP Canaan. He was an avid sportsman. He loved hunting, fishing, soccer, and bowling. Eric is survived by his parents, Dawn and Jean Williams, as well as his siblings, Mark, Kyle, and Lauren. Eric's parents aggressively advocate at local, state, and federal levels to provide correctional officers freedom from dangerous conditions. My colleagues and I within the Council of Prison Locals, along with Mr. and Mrs. Williams, have been actively lobbying for Senate Bill 2380, the Correctional Officer Protection Act, and the accompanying House Bill 4607. We ask the Commission and the community for support of the said bills, as it would mandate the Bureau of Prisons to provide OC pepper spray for all high-level and medium-level institutions throughout the Bureau of Prisons. At present, BOP has expanded its pepper spray program. However, legislation will ensure that the BOP cannot revoke provisions of OC pepper spray as an essential protective equipment that has been denied to federal correctional workers for years past. Additionally, we seek support of the House Bill 814, the Thin Blue Line Act, which imposes harsher penalties on the murder of anyone tasked with protecting our communities. That includes correctional officers, police officers, firefighters, and the like. The intent of this act is to bring peace and justice to the families who have lost loved ones in the line of duty. It has been 2 years since Eric Williams' murder was caught on video, and Jesse Conioy, who was already doing a life sentence, has not yet been brought to justice. Just one day after Eric Williams was murdered in Pennsylvania, Lieutenant Osvaldo Alvarado of Guaynabo, Puerto Rico, was gunned down on his way home from the institution. The Department of Justice has just announced the indictments of 9 individuals. However, they have not yet been brought to justice. Then there was Guerrero and Sablon, inmates who murdered Jose Rivera at USP Atwater 7 years ago. That was my sister institution when I was working in California. Like Williams' murder, these inmates were already doing life sentences, and the family awaits justice to be served. Every day, officers across America risk their lives, and they don't always come home. Please support the Thin Blue Line Act as well as the Eric Williams Correctional Officer Protection Act. Moving from legislation, I will ask for support from the Commission as well as the community in participation of the Eric Williams Race for Justice. On Saturday, May 16th at 10 a.m., AFGE Local 4010, along with the Council of Prison Locals, will be sponsoring the first annual Eric Williams Race for Justice. The Race for Justice is to honor Senior Officer Williams' ultimate sacrifice by promoting officer safety throughout the Bureau of Prisons. The registration for the race may be found on Facebook or online at Eric Williams Race for Justice. Checks and applications may be mailed to me, Summer Star, P.O. Box 3425, LaVale, Maryland 21504, or participants may bring those items to the race. The event is open to the public, and there will be a scholarship awarded to the top placing law enforcement relay team. The relay will be comprised of 4 individuals running 1 mile each. Non-law enforcement teams are welcome to participate in the relay as well. When the relay is completed, a modified run or fun run and walk will take place. Here, participants who register may run, walk, skip 1 to 4 miles, whatever they're comfortable with. Ultimately, the intent is to bring honor and awareness to Senior Officer Williams' sacrifice and to bring together the community and our fellow law enforcement officers. And I will gladly provide copies of the legislation, my mailing address, and applications for the race.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Nedved will inform us on some very important ARC priorities.
Yes, Commissioners. This is the time of year we ask for projects to be submitted for ARC funding. We ask that they would be returned to us by April 10th of this year, and we actually have to then turn them on, to pass them forward, I should say, to Tri-County Council by May 22nd. I've given you a copy of the proposed project list. The staff has vetted the projects and ranked them according to how well they meet the ARC objectives and the readiness of the proposed projects, and also the amount of funds that they're requesting. I'll just read off the top 4 projects. The number 1 project we ranked was the Verso water tank. The second ranked project was 15 dental hygiene units for ACM. The third ranked project was the veterinary clinic renovation for the animal shelter. The fourth ranked project was Frostburg State 3D printer and a CNC machine, and I'll just go one more. And the fifth project was a fiber extension for the Board of Education. I ask, what we'll do this week is I'll present the proposed list of projects to you, and then next week at the public meeting, I will then ask for your authorization to approve the list, with the intervening week being allowed for any comment by the public or a chance for you to amend the proposed list.
I could do.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay, now for the biggie, Mr. Jason.
Good evening, Commissioners. Well, as promised, tonight is our preliminary budget presentation. So I have kind of a condensed version tonight for you in the interest of time. So I'll try to move through this as quickly as I can. Happy to report we have a balanced budget tonight of $84,577,664. As you all know, we've been working on this budget since January with staff and outside agencies, and happy to report that tonight we're coming recommending a balanced budget. So first page of the budget, and I guess first of all, before I really get started, there's a handful of copies here for anyone in the public that might want some to review. This document will be posted online tonight and available, and we'll certainly move through it here. I'm just going to walk right down the list of some of the highlights up here. Keeping it brief, we've talked about most of these things already. We're looking at a 0.5% increase in our assessments, but when you do the math, it actually equates to a loss in real estate revenues for us again of $316,000. It's based on continued stagnant assessments. At this point, I'm beginning to think we're going to have a few more years of these sluggish assessments, so we'll continue to deal with them. And it does incorporate the 1/10 of a penny decrease that you requested in the rate. Income taxes, they're up $1,183,000. They're kind of our saving grace this year. Last year, the state revised down their income tax estimates, and thankfully, we've outperformed their estimates from then on out. So now we're able to bump them up 5%. Also, what you see here is something different for us, $540,000 transfer from debt service. This is from the bond premium we earned on our bonds last year as we borrowed for new Allegany High School. So by law, this can only go to assist us in debt service payments, so it'll help in our payments for year one. So we plugged that revenue in. And then the next line down, $949,000. As you know, the first time since 2012, we've incorporated fund balance in our budget. We talked about this back in January. We were pretty sure we were going to have to use fund balance, and thankfully we used a little less than we were originally forecasting. So at the end of the day, we hate to use any fund balance in our budget, but we feel like we've come up with some good one-time uses of fund balance, counting $150,000 for new election machines that we planned for a few years back, the debt service for Allegany. We planned use of fund balance for the increase in maintenance of effort this year to the Board of Ed, and we also had an increase in the need for fund balance for accounting software as we do the install on our accounting software. As you move down to the expenditures, I won't hit them all, but I'll touch base on a few. You can see there the accounting software, the new election equipment that we're required to get by the state. Have a decrease in economic development this year as we've decided to share some of their costs with our revolving building fund. That fund's the fund we use to lease out the buildings we own to tenants. It's doing very well, and economic development spends a lot of their time there, so we decided to let that fund pay for part of that operation. You can see we cut our PEGO transfer by $250,000 down to zero, just as an effort to balance this budget. Our debt service, as we've talked about many times, is up $1.1 million. That's a result of two things. One is the new Allegany borrowing, which is $650,000, and two is the structuring of our 2013 refinancing. As we did that, it had a structured bump in the payments for this year and next year, so we'll see that go back down on us in 2018. Down to the bottom section, the Board of Education, you can see, is an increase of $419,000, and that's directly the result of maintenance of effort and the teacher pension shift. We're in year 4 of 4 on that shift. Next year, that is fully incorporated in maintenance of effort. So we knew this increase was coming. We had planned for it. So we'll pull a little bit of fund balance this year to cover it. And then just a very small increase for the health department. And that's simply based on their state employees. They got COLAs and had increases in health insurance. So that's just the share there. Moving on to the next slide. This slide's pretty simple slide, really. Just focusing on some of our major tax rates. You can see up top, really big in red, no increase in rates per your recommendation and request. We've incorporated that here. So our income tax rate stays the same at 3.05%. That's pretty well middle of the pack in the state. We rank 9th in the state on income tax. The real property tax rate, 9.780. We're actually dead on middle in the pack in the state with that rate, and that does incorporate the 1/10 of a penny reduction you requested. Recordation tax, as you can see there, at 3.5. That's unchanged. And then the last one, our homestead tax credit at 7%. What we're going to do is this budget ends at Commissioner Shade's recommendation. We're going to analyze the effects of moving that down in the future. So we think the effects of that are rather minimal to us. but it'll save the taxpayers here in the county in the future as assessments do begin to arise, that they can be capped at a lower rate. So much more on that to come, but we will be looking at that as we wrap this budget up.
We have to have that all in place by the end of the calendar year.
Yeah, you got to be well ahead of it, so we'll start the process for next budget year on that one. Next slide here, as you look at it up there, rather busy, but just wanted to talk about all of the funds. We focus almost primarily on the general fund. As you can see, there's many different operating funds within the county. All the rest would be special revenue funds, if you would. So I'm just going to touch very briefly on a couple of them. Third one down, you can see $1,096,000 for our Rocky Gap slots revenue. That's our share that we get from the slots operation at Rocky Gap, and we've talked at length about the local development council and how that money's spent on scholarships at Allegany College and Frostburg State, and then split amongst the fire companies and 2 different capital funds here. So state identified a little over $1 million. We've plugged that in. It doesn't go to the general fund at all, but it's been a nice extra revenue source for us. Our RBF, as you can see there, continues its strong performance. They're generating over $4 million a year in revenues from all their tenants, and we also incorporate the use of their fund balance here so that they can do projects like the Burton Park project. So we make that money available for them, keep it separate and out of the general fund. Last one to talk about is transit. Transit's essentially held the line from last year. They're going to have about a $300,000 transfer from the general fund, and as we talked about in our work session last week, we have trimmed their capital request to 0 for this year. Next slide here focuses on our all of our revenues, and as mentioned before, real estate continues to struggle and is down nearly 1% for us. Local income taxes are up 5%. We were able to bump a recordation and transfer tax. They continue to do well for us. The only other category to really talk about that you can see here is the very bottom category, all other. That's made up of the transfer from debt service we're using for our bond premium and the use of fund balance of nearly $1 million. So that's why you see the bump there. One revenue item that's not necessarily on this list, but we talked about a lot, is highway user revenue. The reason it's not here is because there's really no change in that revenue. We were hoping to see an increase, at least a promise of a future increase there. We didn't get that, and it doesn't look like we may get it for some time. So that revenue is still stuck at about $459,000 for us. This little pie chart breaking out our revenues, and I won't spend much time on this other than to point out local property tax. Just last year was actually a little more than 50% of our revenues. Now you can see it's fallen below that to 48%. Thankfully, income tax has picked up some of the burden. We're at nearly 30% there. And the last thing to point out is state and federal revenues. We talk about that a lot in our budget. At the end of the day, it only accounts to 12.2% of our budget. So while we do rely on it somewhat, thankfully, we've got some other revenue sources to keep us afloat. This slide here is also a rather busy slide. It's easier to review on paper there, but just a couple things to point out. These are our general fund expenditures broken out by function, so the different functions we have within government. You can see general government up there with an increase. That's largely from our accounting software coming on board, and also from COLAs and health insurance. You can see about middle of the pack down there, $400,000 increase from education. That's simply the Board of Ed. The biggest driver in this budget was, once again, debt service that we've talked about already. So that was our big bump for this year, and it's a little strain on us. We're still in manageable territory, but it's certainly been a big increase for this year. This slide's one we started last year. It's pretty simple, but I think it tells a pretty good story of where our money's going. So we simply took a dollar bill and displayed it. I guess first and foremost, the left side, and most of the entire left side, goes to education. So 44% of our budget, almost half of our budget, goes directly to education in the form of the Board of Ed and Allegany College. You can see public safety makes up almost 20% of our budget, and that would be the sheriff, the detention center, 911, our fire companies. So it's a rather important piece. Almost 12% of our budget goes to public works, so that would be our roads department, our engineering department, recycling, many other smaller departments within there. One last thing to point out here, and I think it proves we put our tax dollars to work. Only 10% of our budget goes to general government. That would be all the administrative functions like my office, the administrator's office, the commissioner's office. So when you donate to a charity, you want to see a low number there as far as what their administration is. I think we have that here. We're only at 10%. So I think we're taking the tax dollars and putting them directly to work. This next slide breaks out our expenditures in a little bit of a different way. And we've done this slide for a long time. On the right side is 51% of our budget goes to appropriations. So before we even start, a little over half of our dollars go directly out the door in the form of appropriations, whether it be to the Board of Ed, Allegany College, the Health Department, many other smaller players within there, but our dollars go directly out the door to those agencies before we even get started. One more small thing to point out here, a lot of people always talk about government and how most of government's made up from salaries and fringe. And here it's really not the case. 29% of our budget goes to salaries and fringe. You can see 4% of our budget now goes to debt service. So that's grown a little bit on us, still manageable. And last one to point out is just something for the future we're going to have to watch. Capital outlay is only 2% of our budget. That's fallen from what historically has been nearly twice that amount. So it's something we're going to have to watch as we go forward. We need to make sure we're continuing to maintain our infrastructure, our equipment, our facilities. So,
And Adam will cover that next week.
Adam will cover that next week. We'll go over that next week as we do our CIP presentation. So Adam will talk about it, and I'll talk about how then we'll try to pay for it. So more on that to come. This slide here, a lot of stuff up on the slide. These are all the services that Allegany County provides that aren't provided by municipal government. Not so much the case anymore, but maybe 10 years ago, tax differential was a very hot topic. I think there was 2 court cases regarding tax differential. Been relatively quiet on tax differential since 2004. That's because I think we have a good formula in place that works for us and the municipalities. But this slide simply points out all the things that we do that's not covered by municipalities. So a lot of people talk about double taxation. Well, you can see at the bottom, 70.5% of our budget goes to items that aren't covered in the municipal government. So you're talking education, we're the only ones that contribute to that. Our detention centers, it's $7 million. 911 now is fully moved to being paid for by the county. There was an agreement we had with the city where they were helping us in that transition. It's expired. So 911 is completely paid for by the county. And there's a whole litany of items there you can go down through, but these are all things that we do that municipal doesn't. This slide here is a breakdown on our debt service transfer and just what function of government does that transfer go to? Point you to the bottom half of that pie chart. You can see now with the new Allegany borrowing, the Board of Education equates to 53% of our debt service. So 53% of the debt that we're paying on is for projects at the Board of Ed, whether it be Allegany High School or many other projects over the last 20 years are within that debt service transfer. You can see there's projects a little bit everywhere. Allegany College has some. The library has some. We've done some over the years for economic development and in the health realm, and then others in government, public safety, and public works. We'll also touch on this a little bit more next week as we do our debt affordability presentation. We'll talk about where the debt's going and why it's necessary and where we want to be as we move forward. The total transfer here is $3,715,000. That's under our official goal right now of $4 million. We would hopefully like to move that goal to $3 million in the next couple of years. As we get to fiscal year 18, we think that's a realistic possibility. We obviously don't have the new revenues to support more debt, So I think we're going to have to continue to work towards 3, and we'll talk more about that next week as well. This one here, I won't spend a ton of time on this. This is our Allegany College support, and we just look at the appropriation we make to them and look at the number of students they have. Their enrollment has dipped ever so slightly from last year. It's basically flat. They're down just 70 students. So it's caused our appropriation per student to actually go up just a tick. And when you look at that, we also add in the debt service that we incur for Allegany College. You can see we're up about 3% per student in our spending there. Very similar slide now, focusing on the Board of Ed. It does have a line added to it for our paper gaming operation. As you know, 75% of our paper gaming goes to support Board of Ed projects. So there's a lot going on here. Their enrollment by maintenance of effort is actually up 19 students, but when you look at the enrollment they're projecting in their budget, they're actually down in numbers of students. And the difference there is the difference between kindergarten and pre-K. One counts kindergarten, one counts pre-K. All in all, they're down in the number of students. So you can see at the end of the day, when you lump in our borrowing for Allegany, we're actually spending 5.5% more per student than we did last year for the Board of Ed. This one focuses on our maintenance of effort. Maintenance of effort's been talked about at great length over the last 4 years as we've worked through the teacher pension shift. So right now we are at maintenance of effort. You can see from this slide where we've been historically. We're one of 12 counties right now that are providing at maintenance of effort levels. The teacher's pension shift sort of forced that on most of the counties, so there's still 12 that are providing the same level that we are. Next year we'll watch our maintenance of effort technically grow as the teacher's pension shift rolls right in. You can see one more thing to point out. Since 2001, we've actually given the Board of Ed $9.2 million more than maintenance of effort. So while it's maybe been at maintenance of effort recently, over the years they've gotten much more than maintenance of effort. And with that, that's kind of a brief overview of our budget as it stands right now. Tonight is technically hearing 1, and we'll have 2 more hearings on this over the next 2 weeks, just so that the public can have comment. As I said before, this document's available right after tonight's meeting online. Next week, we'll work through our capital improvement program, and then budget adoption slated for May 28th. And I would like to thank Pam Diaz from my office for her help with this. She helps a ton with our budget, and also Beth Thomas for helping with a couple slides in this budget. And then just in general, I'd like to thank my staff in the finance department. We've been cut in half in the last 5 years, and they keep getting the job done. So big help to me. So that's it for me, unless you have any questions.
No, sir.
Good tight budget again.
We did it again.
We appreciate all your work on this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
Okay, gentlemen, now we'll move into our action agenda. Jake, you want to take care of item 4?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we have some members that are going to be on it. John Emmerich, Dustin Freeze, and Larry Jackson will be serving on the competitiveness group, and I don't see anyone else.
I have all 3 of mine here.
Well, go ahead.
I got Mr. Dave Weimer, Jim Clark, and Nathan Wilson. And thank you guys very much for coming tonight. I most certainly appreciate that.
Good. John Emmerich's one of my appointees on this.
And the additional people are Miss Kristen Carter, Brian Miller, and Jeremy Irons. And, this is something that I think will be very good for Allegany County, very beneficial. It's a group it's going to meet for a set amount of time. It's not going to be appointed forever. And so our hope is that they come back in December with a set of recommendations of what the county does well, what we should focus on moving forward, and really what we should be asking the state government, the federal government, and trying to tie all that in together. So we kind of have a plan and we're on the same page. So thank you.
If I may, Jake, I think it'd be a good idea if we could ask everybody that's appointed to be here for next week's commissioners meeting, and we'll have a short meeting with that group directly after the commission meeting so you can lay out to them exactly what you're looking for, and possibly they can go ahead and appoint a chairman of that group, and after that, they're on their own.
They're on their own. Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, thank you. Item number 5, Matt Diaz, lease addendum number 1 between the Board of County Commissioners and Specs Chemical Services. Matt Diaz, also known as Billy Goat Gruff.
Yes, and I play that role very well. Thank you, Commissioner. Good evening, Commissioners. Come bringing good news tonight. Just bear with me for a minute. Back in 2011, Schroeder Industries expanded at the county's multi-tenant building, hence requiring us to find a place for Specs Chemical Service to reside. And lo and behold, the Burbridge building was just finishing construction at that time, and Specs moved into 10,000 square feet in that building. Over the last couple months, they're going after some contracts that they feel confident that they will be able to hopefully secure, and they need an additional 4,000 square feet, bringing the residual leftover space of the Burbridge building to 10,000 square feet remaining. Specs will lease 14,000 now. There'll still be 10,000 square feet vacant. Not only do they want to lease the additional 4,000 square feet, but they want to pay the county $5,000 a year to have a first right of refusal on the remaining portion of the building. So I view that as a positive thing, not only for the county, but for the company as well. And I'm here tonight to ask for your approval for that lease addendum.
Gentlemen, do we have a motion to move forward with this lease agreement?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Got it, Matt?
Thank you.
Next, we'll have Dan DeWitt, speaking Department of Natural Resources, Capital Improvement Grant.
Gentlemen, good evening.
Dan?
I've been here a few times for this project in the last year or so. As you may remember, we've received over $500,000 in grant funding from DNR to construct a stormwater pond, wetland water quality treatment system near Frostburg State, near the MD building, Little League fields in that area of Frostburg, to treat the separated stormwater runoff that has now been accomplished as a result of Frostburg's CSO projects over the last 12 years. And we bid out the project. It was originally bid back in 2011 through the Soil Conservation District. They only had enough funding to complete the piping to the site of the pond. That's been done now. Carl Belt did that back in 2011 and 12. We obtained the funding to construct the pond this time last year. And we just went to advertisement and bids for that last month, and the bids came in higher than we anticipated as a result of some factors that none of us were really aware of, with increased hauling costs and just, I guess, the length of time from the time it was bid previously until now. We've asked DNR to see if there's a possibility there would be additional grant funding available, and before they would be able to look, I guess, formally and give us an answer on that, we need to send them a letter requesting the additional funding that we need and talk about some of the reasons why that's necessary. Currently, we're funded at just over $560,000 in grant funding. The low bids came in from Carl Belt, and it's going to put us in the neighborhood of around $800,000 needed in grant funding. It's no additional loan. The in-kind staff time will be the same. There won't be any additional county obligation other than just needing more money to get the project started. If it's not available, there's some things we can look at in terms of trying to apply in the next cycle of funding, but to determine what would be the next step forward, we need to go ahead and send this letter, and we're here to request permission to have Commissioner Valentine sign that letter and then move forward with DNR and see if that's a possibility.
Do we have a motion to move forward with this grant application?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Mr. Everly.
Commissioners, good afternoon. We have 3 items on your consent agenda this afternoon. Item number 7 is a budget amendment in the amount of $65,000 from Mr. Bittinger at the Board of Education. The board is simply asking that we transfer funds from instructional salaries to textbooks and supplies. Item 8 is an amended ground lease between Frostburg State University and Allegany County for the Allegany Business Center at FSU. Commissioners, as you're aware, this is a very important partnership between our 2 entities. This partnership dates back to January of 2001 and covers 56 acres. property at Frostburg State. And item number 9 is an extension of the county's recycling agreement with Penmar Recycling for a period of July 1st, 2015 through June the 30th of 2016, and one-year extensions through 2021.
Gentlemen, do we have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do you have anything additional, Mr. Irvin?
Not at this time.
Mr. Rudd?
Nothing.
Thank you.
Wow.
Commissioner Shade, do you have any additional statements you'd like
We'll
to make?
pass tonight.
Great.
I am just going to keep this very brief because I'm just very happy to see all 3 members, and I'm going to embarrass them a little bit of who I picked for this little group that's getting together. First of all, Nathan Wilson is a local businessman with 2 very good businesses that he's built from the ground up, and this is why I chose these guys. Dave Weimer, you know, between the 2 of them, I've known him my whole life, and I've watched him build something up from nothing. The reason I chose Dave is Dave also has several businesses in Allegheny County and West Virginia, so I thought that he would be very helpful in this to seeing how the 2 states actually work together. The third guy I owe as much to as I do my own dad would be Jim Clark, and he represents the western end of Allegheny County's natural resources development, which actually built this county and built a country. So I didn't mean to embarrass you guys, but you know, I wanted 3 guys that was going to be vocal and would speak their mind, that actually has employees and keeps business moving. So gentlemen, thank you very much. So that's what I have.
Thanks a lot. Great choices. I'd just like to say, in the past 2 days, we've had 2 very informative meetings out at ACM on law enforcement issues. Sad to say how big the heroin problem is, not only in Allegheny County, but across the entire state of Maryland. Both these meetings dealt somewhat with that problem, and the meeting today was from the new administration in Annapolis, talking about grants and other ways that we can get help from downstate to help take care of our crime problems here. All right, we'll move into constituent statements. We've got 1 person signed up. Ed?
Commissioners, for the record, my name is Edward W. Taylor, Jr., 400 South Allegheny Street, Cumberland, Maryland, and I'm here representing the Cumberland Historic Cemetery Organization, which I'm the president of. And I'm here with several of my members this evening. I want to continue our conversation we had last week on the hotel motel tax. Commissioner Valentine, you asked us for a more detailed list of what our intentions would be with the amount we were asking for. I believe in 24 hours, I think we delivered that for you. It's a 3-page letter along with, I guess there was a dozen or so photos of some of the projects we've done in the past, and our latest news clipping from the Cumberland Times News, plus a major article we had in the Times News last fall. In addition to all that, I want to add a few things. The Cumberland Historic Cemetery Organization, to my knowledge, is the only organization that asked for a small portion of hotel motel tax that does not have anybody on the payroll. In other words, everybody in this organization is a volunteer. We have no, the title I hear all the time in a lot of these nonprofits, executive directors. There's never been one, never will be one. Today I spoke to the city of Frostburg, Mr. Kirby up there, the administrator, and he told me their process for organizations such as ours that would ask for Frostburg City hotel motel tax is practically identical to the city of Cumberland, which I stated last week we had no problem with. One issue I want to point out that it's very difficult because we have a very unique situation. We don't sell tickets such as to a railroad, that sort of thing. The purpose of what we call the information monuments, which we're trying to seek funding for, those monuments act as a tour guide when we're not there. And it's very difficult to really pinpoint numbers, it always has been and will be in the future, to pinpoint numbers of who's visiting the cemetery. As I stated last week, and I'll repeat again, at the historic Pollock Cemetery, just feet off the C&O Canal, there's visitors there every day. But we're not there every day to greet them and see who they are. And that's why we have signage, we have an outdoor brochure rack for those folks to take, And I do know the brochures go very quickly. We're down there at least twice a week refilling that brochure rack. And we have the information monuments, which are permanent fixtures telling that great history of that site. In addition, cemeteries to a county tourism package and to a city tourism package throughout the United States has always been and is a very vital part of tourism. Cemeteries, I know the city of Baltimore, Greenmount Cemetery, it's a major tourist attraction, and many, many people go there to visit those historic sites. They have guided tours, but they also have self-tours. And again, with the self-tours, it's rather impossible to track those numbers. So in closing, I hope we have provided more of the information that you asked for, and that may be sufficient. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'd like to give you a reminder that our next public meeting is Thursday, May 7th at 5 o'clock in this room. Watch for announcements on our budget schedule. And with that, meeting is closed. Thank you.